Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello, all you beautiful people. Welcome back to another Ever.Ag production. Today we have a very, very special show for you. A little mashup of the grain feed and tech talk. So joining me today from Chicago, one of the stars of the grain feed, Jim Matthews, also star of Tech Talk, Andy Fallman, and then joining us from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, the true star of the grain feed, Jake Kingsley. Gentlemen,
True star.
Thank you for joining me today on this Monster Mash Ever.Ag production.
Monster Mash.
Thanks for having us, Cody. We're very excited to be here.
Glad to be here, Cody.
I'm excited. This has never happened before. This is a once-off. I'm sure it's going to happen many more times once we win an Emmy for this show.
Yes.
But until then, we have got 4 charts, 2 grain, 2 dairy. I think we should jump right in. The first chart, if I'm not mistaken, new crop Dec Corn.
We had several people reach out about new crop corn.
That's right.
And this is Jimbo's territory.
Here we go.
Let's go.
All right, so just so everyone knows at home, right, we've got Andy handling the charts. We've got us providing the feedback and analysis into the charts alongside Andy. So how about from a non-fundamental perspective, Andy?
All right, let's hit the tech.
Pure technicals first.
We're going to go technicals.
Pure tech first.
I actually had a good conversation with Market-Eye Mike about this, and we did have Tom from Iowa also ask about Dec new crop corn. I said that right?
You did?
I did.
Dec Corn,
We're off to a good
new
start.
crop.
New crop. We're off to a good start. I think what sticks out to me the most is you have somewhat of a failed breakout of this long-term trend, right? I mean, we just, I don't know if I call it collapse, but we went from 520 to 440 was the lowish, somewhere in there. Let's take a little peek ski at this thing. 446, I was close.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have somewhat of an M, right? And that is a sign of weakness. So you tried to break out, couldn't get through, 480, tried twice.
Yeah.
Once, twice. And then now we broke through this area right here. But this is where we really took off from, right? That's where you, cemented the breakout.
Yeah.
And then since then, it's just been kind of nope. And now we're breaking back through that price. That's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
So I think what I told Market-Eye yesterday is if we get a close through here, 450 becomes a pretty big magnet. Does that jive with the fundamental stuff?
I think it does. And I think you've got that large rally right up towards 480 there that we then quickly failed from. So I believe that's the prospective plantings report day where the USDA came in with that end of March prospective plantings. We came in at 90 million acres. Much of the market was at least projecting something around 91. A lot of folks had us around 92 million acres. And again, that's the surveyed number in terms of what we are projected to plant for this year. So currently planters are rolling across the U.S. The assumption was 91 to 92 million acres. Government comes in at 90. That's the pop you are seeing on that big, bright green candlestick there. But like Andy noted, we ended up failing there. We had been there maybe a week prior. Lots of resistance there. I think you could argue a lot of the actual row crop farmers are stepping in at that 480 level and saying, I think I can beat my cost of production here. I'm starting to commit to some sales, if not some hedges at this stage. We've had a lot of pressure since then. And Jake, I mean, this is something we're watching very closely, especially to push through really the lows of that report day and the day prior. I think it's a significant move. And this is part of the patience that we've been preaching to our dairies is let us get down below that threshold and try for a real move down towards that 450 to 455 type of threshold. And I think that mashes up just like this show with Andy's analysis, right, Jake?
I think that's right. And I think you said it, that spike there kind of got a little bit of corn moving into the market. Our friends over there managing grain producer risk, Britt from the Furrow and her team kind of mentioned that pop got a fair bit of at least their customer base's corn moving to the market. And we're also hearing since then that there's been some corn moving into commercial elevators on delayed pricing contracts, which is interesting and should play right into the hand of the feed buyer. I think being patient is starting to pay off. We've been talking for a while now of no real material change. Well, I think we're starting to see that change occur. Talking with some folks in different parts of the country yesterday, old crop values have started to come down. Corn basis is down 15 or 20 cents, depending on which market you're in. And this is primarily rail dependent markets, Texas, Idaho, California, some of those guys. They're finally seeing a decline of 15 or 20 cents a bushel on old crop basis, April through September corn. More interestingly, is that we are seeing this now trickle into new crop numbers. We're seeing some new crop numbers. We've been talking about waiting on that. We've got a big balance sheet. We've got some acres going in the ground. South America's looking pretty good. Are we going to reset the whole market? It feels like this corn that's moving into the commercial pipelines pushed old crop lower, and now new crop. We're within arm's reach of what I would call the historically average range. If you look back to 2015 to 2019, when feed markets were pretty quiet, not a lot of volatility there at all, we're within 20, 30 cents a bushel of basis numbers that we were seeing in corn back in that 5-year stretch. And that's for stuff for this coming October through next September. That's starting to look pretty enticing. We may be getting to a point of, if not purchasing corn, certainly thinking about some targets not far from here for basis contracts for the next feed year.
I'll tell you what's interesting. I threw it on the chart. You guys are talking about it, 480. Look at that.
Yeah.
It bounced off there, right there. That could get a little dicey if we were able to get through 480.
Yeah.
That's a big number right there.
Yeah. And I think for especially after that report day, for Jake and I, right, we were coming into that. You had managed money holding a very significant net short position. I mean, that report day came out on a Thursday, but that was the Thursday before Good Friday holiday. So you had a 3-day weekend in terms of markets being closed. You had managed money holding that substantial net short. I think they were caught off guard. I think a lot of us were with that 90 million number. And then they covered those shorts fairly substantially to take risk off heading into that weekend. Now, also have to kind of take a step back. Remember, that's when rains really started to hit the Midwest pretty hard heading into Easter. We started getting them another week or two after. So the drought situation has changed a lot in the Midwest. So we've seen a lot of fundamental pressure mash up here then with that technical resistance at 480.
Here's the big question, though. The settle today in Dec Corn, 460 even. If you get an open tomorrow or tonight, a little bit lower, I've got to imagine 450 is probably a pretty prominent number to go and test.
Yikes. I would agree. I think this is the first time we've seen your eyes on the show today, by the way.
Yeah.
You just had them covered
They
up by that.
They look nice.
Give us an Owen style, can you give us one of these? There you go.
Jake taught me that.
I was going to say that. Yeah, it's a Jake move.
What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, Jake,
Let's go.
want to move on to some protein?
Let's go. Protein.
We get some December bean meal coming in hot.
Let's hit the tech analysis
Gentlemen.
first. What do we got here?
Same kind of thing, right? But I think this is actually a little bit, I don't know, friendlier is the right word. It's hard to be friendly, something that's had this big of a break. But for me, I guess when I first glance, what sticks out to me the most, this low, taking a shot at getting there and just not quite getting there.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've had a pretty significant break. What is this? 420-ish? Calling around there, 417. So we got down to 340, did punch through. We couldn't stay there. Popped back, got through this downtrend. Now we're consolidating again, but this time we're doing it technically on a higher low.
Yep.
One of Cody's favorites because you get the buy button on, you get the left click. You like the left click, right?
I like the left click.
Left clicking is buying. So what about if you only have there's no button.
Max
there.
or
There's no button there. It's just one
this
button.
is not mine.
So
You don't know what you're going to do.
It's not my mouse.
I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I know what you're going to do.
But look at that. RSI has just been trading sideways for the past.
To me, what sticks out to me too is this. We're finally starting to get some positive momentum.
Yep.
I think at the very least, if you're looking to own it, it's telling you where you're wrong. And it's not that far away. Throw it as a 336-ish.
Yeah.
If you're owning it around here, you're owning it at 341. So you've got a pretty good risk reward in terms of owning it. I'd imagine it's probably worth taking a stab. What do you think?
And I think in terms of the conversations we are having with our dairies is that the downside potential, at least on our opinion from the feed squad, I think your downside potential for futures, then Jake, you'll talk the basis in a moment. You have greater downside opportunities, I think, for corn at this point than you do for protein. I just want to make sure that we're not coming across as if we are turning bullish protein by any means. However, there's been a very significant difference between those two markets and between those two charts. Very much more of a sideways tendency. I think, Jake, we're having folks step out a little bit further into protein more so than folks have been stepping into corn. We've tried to remain very flexible, very patient, very close to home with their corn purchases. Protein maybe stepping a little further out there. And it's not just the protein fundamentals themselves. It's also the fact that soybeans, from which we derive this protein, just has a naturally tighter balance sheet fundamentally than the corn market does. I think we still have to get over a couple more hurdles here before we can feel at least a bit more comfortable with the idea of new crop meal, pushing into the lower 300s and towards 300. Maybe we have to get past soybean planting, perhaps. Maybe get those final reads on just how good the South American crop really did look and how much is making its way to port. But Jake, in terms of the basis conversation, is it fairly similar?
Yeah, I think there's probably even less room to work in the basis window here, at least in the short term. We've come off of some of the highs of the last couple of years. We're probably, for the most part, in soybean meal, we're within $10 or $15 of probably where the bottom end of the basis range is, if everything were to go perfectly well. Canola has found a fair bit more strength, and I think that's just purely the seasonal aspect of that product. Everything's coming out of Canada, or most of that's coming out of Canada, and in the summer months, it starts to strengthen up a bit. And we've got pretty good Chinese demand out of the West Coast for that stuff. That's kept it fairly firm in a basis perspective. Soybean meal is kind of now staring at this potential for some extended shutdown times for repairs and maintenance at a lot of crush plants, probably in the next month or two. That could slow down crush a little bit and maybe get things to be a little bit supportive. So that's why we've been okay with folks going out and owning, especially with futures down here where they're at. You shave another $5 or $10 off of this, it feels easy to buy protein through June and then be working orders to maybe get another little step lower and get the stuff through September bought. I think if you have stuff bought through June, you can afford to let planting run through here and a little bit of this downtime go through. NOPA crush, the soy crush here, is still cruising right along, very healthy. There's a lot of meal hitting the pipeline. So those guys kind of get through their shutdowns and come back online. There may be another opportunity to catch a dip and price out the rest of the summer. Now, am I talking $300 futures and $20 off a basis? No, probably another 5 or 10 off a basis and 5 or 10 off of futures. You see that probably cleaning up the rest of the summer, and then look for opportunity in the new crop window.
I think what's interesting about this too is that a lot of times moves happen in phases of 3. So we have this big break, we'll call it phase 1, and then you usually have some period of consolidation that occurs. It's tough to say how long that, call it phase 2 lasts. But assuming this market keeps consolidating, then I think you have to be really mindful of like a potential retracement. 360, I just threw this while you guys are chatting, 365 to 375. And if you get back up into this 375 area, you're back into all this noise where the market really took off from. So echo what you guys are saying in terms of you're buying it here, you at least know where you're wrong, and it's not that far away. But it seems like the upside potential should we start to go. And I think you could, considering if you keep consolidating here. I think that's something to be really mindful, just from technical standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know the grain stuff the way you guys do. So I'm not an expert by any means. And I certainly don't know hats either. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that either.
Clearly, I don't know hats either.
I don't know like what gallon hat these guys have on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cody's got maybe a couple pints there. I'm not even sure.
Couple 2-3 pints or something like that. I mean,
not sure what qualifies as a gallon.
Jake said I had the wrong hat on. I need to have my straw hat on because it's the wrong season. But
it's the wrong season.
Jake knows.
It's basically summer in Texas.
There you go.
All right,
are we rolling into a little bit of dairy on this mashup
dairy time?
Let's hit dairy country. Here we go.
Big cheese.
Here we go. Big cheese coming in hot. Yeah, this is an oldie but a goodie. CME cheese on a weekly basis. Cody, we really haven't heard you talk. I mean, we've barely been seeing. We just now get to see your eyes. So let's hear what you have to say.
I mean, I think spot cheese has a little bit of a run higher here. We haven't quite broken through. We go from the high of what we saw back in April 2022 and just draw ourselves a little bit of a trend line. I don't think we've quite broken out of that.
I see what you're saying.
Oh.
Yep. Right there.
Yeah, there you go.
I got you covered.
We're at a 161 average right now. We've been at a 161 average for the past 3 days. 181 would get us out of that, give or take.
Sure. Somewhere in there, right? And in fact, it could probably even be a little bit less if I'm not mistaken.
This is going to be the time that we're going to test it, right? You've kind of got a little bit of a W formation forming right now. It is Thursday. Thursday afternoon is when we are filming this show. So we have one more day of trade in the week. But if we can get up there to 170, we're looking good.
What's that right there, Cody?
I think we've been talking about that gap for a while. That what do we got? 183, 184?
About that. Gaps are unfinished business, man. I totally agree with everything you're saying. You have a nice W. You had this like secondary downtrend, so to speak, that went from basically here to here after you made this touch. What's interesting is how the futures are trading, right? I mean, if I go take a quick peek at the cheddar board here, May cheese, 175 last. We started pricing, what day is today? You said it's Thursday? We started pricing on Monday. It's a 5-week month. Learn more about that from Joe at Basis Loaded, by the way.
I know.
There you go. Someday Joe's going to give us a shout out. We'll see. Anyways, this feels like it's getting ready to break out. It's interesting. We got ADPI right around the corner, too. It's always a little bit of fireworks when the show's in town. But yeah, I totally agree. High or low, not just once, but really, I mean, if you want to go back, I think you could argue twice, can't you?
You and I have talked about this personally, and I know we've talked about it with clients, but recently also down here between $16 and $17 in May class 3, the moves every day are more violent, right? You got 75 higher, 62 lower, 35 higher. It's not just 5 to 10 cents anymore. These are some massive moves that we're seeing intraday.
Such an aggressive word to describe describe it too. Violent.
Violent.
Very violent.
Got a little uncomfortable.
It's
How else are
aggressive.
you going to describe 75 higher to 62 lower the next
I
day?
agree, man.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with it. I know Jim's getting a little uncomfortable over
Well,
here.
I'm not wearing a hat.
Oh, Jim, what do you think of this thing?
You could argue there's potentially a wedge forming as well. If we continue to make higher lows as we move into the end of this wedge, I think the violence that Cody is referring to, I don't know. I think you can really break out of that thing pretty aggressively. And then that's when you go back and test some of those highs potentially and perhaps mine that gap, if you will.
I think Jim's calling for $2 cheese.
I think so too. You heard it here, folks.
$2. $2 chuck right over here.
Yeah.
Buck Chuck, baby.
Let's go.
Disclaimer, I'm the feed guy. So just a disclaimer. Jake, anything on cheese besides delicious?
What's your favorite kind of cheese, Jake?
Oh, man. My favorite kind of cheese? I like a good blue cheese.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Kind of boring, but
Well,
okay.
okay. What are your favorite kinds of
I
cheeses?
don't know if I call that boring. I like
It
Gouda.
is what it
I'm
is.
a Gouda
I
fan.
love Gouda.
A good
I'm a
slice
big
of
Gouda fan.
Gouda.
Dutch would say howda.
Oh, yeah. We did get corrected. We got corrected in person a couple years ago. I remember this.
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Ik spreek een beetje Nederland.
Oh, my.
What else we got?
It's a breakout. We're going. Let's
It's a
go.
breakout.
All right, last but certainly not least, this also came, I believe, at request. This has been one that's been interesting too. This is July to Sep Class 3.
The bell of the ball, if you will.
Bell of the ball. I could see Cody being a ballroom dancer, just crushing it.
That hat?
Come
I
on,
mean,
with that thing.
that could do anything.
I mean, Cody, what is this guy right here?
Looks like a pretty good W formation
And
right
what
there.
are W's for?
Winners!
Winners, winning.
Or going higher.
I think this is good. I mean, like you had this long-term trend, broke out on a nice W. You're solidifying the breakout.
You got to ask yourself, do you want to chase that gap at 1880 up there?
I think you should. And this could get a little dicey too, because this gap is basically right. Look at where this thing is. Back on
those
this
nights.
contract high. Imagine a close that fills this gap and closes into new contract highs too. It could be
What a world.
launch button activated on this thing. So I think this is shaping up nicely. I mean, we've had this big move. To Cody's point, violence. It could be a face ripper. There's another one that's aggressive, a face ripper.
Yeah.
Just give it a chance, right? Violence,
Yeah.
face rippers, give it a chance.
We're going to give it a chance.
We're going to keep the kids in a different room for this episode. It used to be a family program until
Yeah.
we matched up with Tech Talk.
Yeah, for sure.
I would also wonder from the tech perspective, if we're talking about class 3, is there a way to overlay corn onto here? Because historically, there's usually a correlation to an extent between corn pricing and milk pricing.
The last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of dairymen say, I make more money at $7 corn than I do at $4 corn. No matter
Yeah.
where you are in the country,
Yeah.
that is kind of a blatant thing that people look for.
Yeah, and I think it's inherently for us, we want to get excited about the prospect of new crop corn breaking its way to 450, and if we can have a even average summer in terms of development weather, I think Jake and I would love to see $4 on new crop at some point, whether pre or post harvest.
There you go.
However, does that necessarily mean milk pricing can sustain the rally we're potentially referring to here? I always like to keep this in mind here.
Okay, so ask and you shall receive.
Yes.
I don't know what Easter style colors that were light blue, dark blue, these blues.
Mhm.
That's new crop corn overlaid with Q3 class 3.
Yeah.
What's that telling you?
It's going to chase it. I mean, ultimately, you see class 3 being weighed down by the break in corn futures to an extent there.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you'd rather see these,
In my opinion.
like you'd rather see them be tightly correlated.
Not sure if I'd rather see it necessarily, because again, we would love to see milk run up while corn continues to break down. I just wonder from a more historical perspective, if those two stay more in line with each other and corn continues to break down. Like Cody, what you were saying, there's a lot of folks, I think especially in the Midwest, that would say, do I want to feed expensive corn? Inherently, no. I don't feel good about that. But there is a tendency to see higher milk pricing when you do see corn up like that. So just something to keep in mind, that we want to keep some of these price relationships.
This is a product of the mashup.
I think it is.
What a great product of the look. Right
think it
here,
is.
This little overlay chart took me a minute to figure it out, by the way.
Yeah, we think you did a good
We
job.
should probably get some new colors or something. Like, what kind of colors would you want to see?
Oh boy, I don't know. Well, one's for blue cheese, I guess. We made Jake happy. What else do you want, Jake? You're already kind of clashing. You've got a white hat, black suit.
Is that a suit? Yeah, like,
I don't know.
Look at you,
Is there a
Richard.
t-shirt maybe with
what do you
a
got going on?
Yeah, well,
sport coat?
We talked about suits in our chat, but nobody wanted to respond to it. So
yeah, we planned for this. I did not get a wardrobe personnel on my end, so I did the best I could on my own.
Right. You did great.
You did great.
But I did apply the things we discussed, as did Cody. Folks in Chicago, not as good at team players.
Got to do our own thing up here.
Just marching to the beat of our own drum. Blue cheese.
Wearing my
Gouda,
uniform.
Polo
Whatever
Thursday.
kind of cheese you want, we got it. Let's go.
Howdy.
Your Dutch is phenomenal, by the way.
Donkey Bell.
It's phenomenal.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you tuning into this 30-minute long mashup that we've had that you so graciously are following us all the way to the end of the cliff here. I want to thank Jake for tuning in from Dallas-Fort Worth. Jim and Andy, we appreciate you guys being here from Chicago, as always, from the Mitten State. Happy to be here with you. And I do believe, gentlemen, we're going to have more of these mashups in the future. I think this went exquisitely well.
Yes.
Your adjectives today are
Yeah.
really on par.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I've
just,
been reading a lot more books. I've been working on my...
I can tell. I can see
you've
that.
been up in the reading.
You look like you've been reading more books. You look good.
Yeah,
for
I can
sure.
read. My
Yeah.
speaking's been good.
You know what
Yeah.
you should do? You should read about like silverware and plates and stuff like that. Maybe you'll actually get a plate.
All right, everybody. And with that, we bid you a fond
Shut it down
farewell
right there too. It's the same
We'll
as
see
when
you
we
next
talked about
week.
you getting a cat.
You,
on
will you,
Tech Talk.
will you thank Paige?
Thank you, Paige, for
Paige,
being here with us through this whole show that's been so glorious.
putting up with us.
Putting up with us, helping us out, getting the computers to mash up just like us. A big shout out to Corey and Lexi also on this to make sure that we kept it together. No one cried, no one got hurt, and I think we're doing pretty well. Shout out.
Philographer.
Have you concluded? Is it over?
Is it over?